Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Master Chess Web Show. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping first of all, and that is I want to show you our website, and you can see it here, and it has our videos of the recordings we've done so far, and also we've got the schedule here. And most importantly, we've got a contact form here. And if we click on the contact form, you'll see that you can fill in your name, email, subject, and message. And this will go to both of us. So then we can try and tailor the material to what viewers are interested in. So please do use that. And from next week, we'll be doing 3 shows on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But we will not be putting all of them on YouTube. So please do follow us on Twitch if you want to see this. They won't all be completely freely available on YouTube from next week. Meanwhile, please also do subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we will continue to put content up there, and also like our videos, especially if you like them. But you can like them even if you don't like them. And Andrew managed to contract COVID, but the show must go on. And I'm gonna let him present the first game here. So we'll now just switch over to this. Just make right.
Yes, that's exceptionally kind of you, Nigel. Thank you very much.
I'll take over whenever, if the COVID starts to hit you, I will.
The audience will be pleased to know that the COVID has not finished me off just yet. Well, some of them might not, but generally speaking, I hope the audience will be pleased that it hasn't finished me off yet. Yeah, it's pretty unpleasant. It's just like having a really bad head cold. I'm lucky to have Omicron, I think, or whatever the latest offshoot of that is, which is pretty mild. But nevertheless, it's still uncomfortable. I dread to think what the original versions were like, especially if you were unvaccinated. However, as Nigel says, the show must go on. And we're going to start this morning with a very interesting game, which complements my latest book, which is about to come out for every man, called Play the O'Kelly Sicilian. And I don't know about you, Nigel, but the O'Kelly seems to be, it's always been a bit of a grey area, hasn't it?
Yeah. I have actually seriously toyed with the idea of playing the O'Kelly, right? And I was looking at the newly published PDF of a sampling of your book, and unfortunately, it didn't say what you had in mind against 3 knight c3, because that was one of the reasons that I sort of delayed wanting to play it. I was a bit bothered about 3 knight c3, so I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I don't want to give away. I don't want to give away everything that's in the book. I'm not sure every member will be too pleased about that. But let's put it this way: for every line, there's a main line for black, and there's an alternative. There's a lot of variety within the O'Kelly complex, which black can call on. And various grandmasters have been attracted to the O'Kelly over time. I noticed Istvan Chom. Unfortunately, he's now passed away, but he was very keen on the O'Kelly. I think he liked his flexibility and the fact that black could transpose into lots of different opening setups using 2a6. That's one of the attractions of the opening.
I've got a good Chom anecdote, actually. It was in Budapest. I was we were playing in the same tournament, and he had this reputation of losing in the main line of the Richter Rouser, right? And I saw him analysing this game, and he came up with all these brilliant sacrificial lines for white, not for black, the side that he played. And so I looked at him. He's got this reputation of being a really quiet positional player, and I sort of looked at him and said, "What's going on? You don't play this. How come you're playing like that?" And he said, "Oh well, I've been checkmated so many times in this line. I just know what to do with white now." And he had a good sense of humour. He's a really nice guy, John.
Yeah, I remember you
Real
invited him to
gentleman.
your Owens Corning Wrexham tournaments, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah, where I invited all my favourite people. Basically, that's the power you have. If you run a tournament, you can
He
invite
was
people you like.
a good house guest.
Yeah, so I had Vlastimil Janso, David Bronstein, Istvan Chon, and Heikki Westerinen, and these were the I think I had one or two others as well. Those were like four of my firm favourite older GMs to invite. Mark Taimanov, I invited him as well.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Anyway, we now return to the present day and the game between Wesley So and Vladislav Artemiev. And what has been noticeable in the last few years is there's been a surge in popularity of the O'Kelly Sicilian, mainly due to the pandemic, because there's been so much quick play going on and bullet and blitz and all this. People are looking for surprise opening weapons. And the O'Kelly, being, pretty sound and quite unknown almost among really strong players, not unknown, but not quite as well known as other systems, especially in the Sicilian. And you don't get the opportunity with White to trot down some main line where you're bashing out the moves and you're using cloud engines. I mean, that may happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And so the O'Kelly is a bit of a fertile area for surprise play, which Artemiev has been using to his great advantage. And so what I thought I'd do is to show you a game. It's only a blitz game, but, I found looking in the databases over the last few years, it's a depressing experience because all the games you find are blitz games or bullet games or something, even, and you wonder what to make of this. Should you use them in the book? Should you not? I've decided to use them because actually they can prove quite interesting, especially between players of the highest standard, as we've got here. So we've got Wesley So playing white and Artemiev playing with the black pieces. Now, in a game like this, obviously Artemiev being very strong, but he's not favourite, is he, against So? He's lower rated. So's one of the greatest players in the world. And so he probably felt the O'Kelly was a good choice. And so we come to a position where, for donkey's years, excuse me, the theory books just said that C3 or C4 gave White an undoubted advantage. With knight C3 as a good backup move on move 3, that was good for White as well. D4, not thought to be that good because it allows Black to... actually, there are two ways for Black, which I discuss in the book. The traditional way to get a good game is to play E5 here, where you get a good version of the Najdorf or Sveshnikov or something like that, because White can't play knight B5. But I actually discuss in the book that it could be that E5 is a better move still for Black. Probably White should transpose back into the other line, but that's also a possibility. Anyway, there are plenty of possibilities against D4. Do you know, if you play the O'Kelly in a normal game these days, I think you're bound to get C3 or C4 or move 3. And sure enough, in this game, So decides to play C3.
Andrew, didn't Michael Franklin play the O'Kelly for donkey's years?
Well, I think,
the London system with White.
Ever since the Big Bang, since he's been playing the O'Kelly, and he always played D5 here. But there are definitely alternatives. And again, I'm not going to reveal what's in the book, but I've got two systems against this. The main line is D5, and there are a lot of Franklin games in the book, by the way. For our American friends and others worldwide, Michael Franklin is an English FM. I think he's still going strong at the age of 91. And he has played the O'Kelly, as Nigel said, throughout his entire career. And this was the line he favoured. Essentially, Black is going back into a C3 Sicilian. You'll have to forgive me for the time being. The COVID.
Let me know. Let me know if you want a bit of a break, Andrew, and I'll go through some of the next moves.
Sure. Well, anyway, what the current thinking is that White should be able to get an advantageous C3 Sicilian by playing this way, because black's perhaps unnecessarily weakened the B6 square at this early stage. So white's next move makes sense, because he's angling to put the knight on C4 and then play it into B6. But Artemiev shows that this is nothing to worry about. Just plays very calmly here. I mean, you can just see a lot of your opponents doing this. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And now black plays knight BD7, which stops the threat. Obviously, the knight can continue his journey to E3. If it doesn't, black may play B5. As long as this is holding up for black, this position, then knight A3 is nothing to fear. In fact, it costs white a lot of time, because having put the knight on the edge, he's got to get the knight back into play. So doesn't see too much in the knight move again, knight to E3. So he just plays bishop E2. And now black continues very solidly, bishop E7, castles. And now I don't know what you think, Nigel, but I think this is okay for black. Would you say?
Yeah. It reminds me a bit of a Rubinstein, or it's a bit like a Rubinstein French, where you've already got your pawn lever in with C5. And it looks like a slightly more comfortable version of the Rubinstein French than the actual Rubinstein. And this structure is, you also get it in the Tarrasch version of the French, with where you go through C5, takes on D5, queen takes D5.
It is very much like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Probably some lines of the Scandi as well.
One of the things that black's got to worry about here is if white gets a bishop to F3. So you've always got to watch out for that, knight E5 and bishop F3. But there should be easy ways to combat that. And if white has spent some time moving his queen's knight around, so this should be fairly comfortable for black. Black hasn't wasted any time at all developing his pieces. And with B5 and bishop B7 coming up, I think black is okay, basically. Anyway, So was tempted to take on C5. Which gives him a queenside pawn majority, of course. But he's a long way from being able to exploit that feature of the position. And now black plays B5. So pretty comfortable play for black, as long as bishop D6 isn't working. And this is what I liked about this game. You know, So was fighting against this easy plan by black of just putting his bishop on B7 and bringing the rooks to the center. But it turns out that actually the knight on D6 looks impressive, but I'm not so sure. How dangerous would you say the queenside pawn majority is in this position? I mean, that's a very common feature of all the openings you described.
Yeah, well, what can often happen and is that black will, in a lot of the endgames that you get, black can actually centralize his king more easily than white can do so, because he's got the central pawn majority. So you find this in a lot of openings where you've got a central pawn majority for one side, and a queenside majority for the other side. In the old days, they used to say, oh, the queenside majority is good. But as long as there's some pieces on, then having a central pawn majority allows you to put your king and have like a frontal shield. So what you will often get in endgames arising from this kind of position is you get a black king coming to the center, and possibly with pawns on F6 and E5, you know, and it starts to get very comfortable for black. In the Rubinstein, then Georg Meyer has played a lot of games like this, and you can also find them in Vaganian's games, that he's played some long end games, but centralizing his king more easily than the white one, and that has given him a shade of an edge.
Yeah, well, of course, black is now threatening rook D8. So this is the problem for white. He can't maintain his knight on D6. And, well, the next move is kind of an admission of, not defeat, but that he can't maintain this knight for very long. And once the queens come off, the only thing black's got to be careful about here is going into some very poor ending. The 3-2 majority on the queen side is not too dangerous as long as black is able to keep the right pairs of pieces on. And the next move, of course, well, Now I think just black's very comfortable. What do you think, Nigel?
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, the move knight a4 that we get next is a very instructive one because it routes white's queenside pawns to the spot. He can't play b3 because c3 would hang, and meanwhile there's pressure on b2. So I think black is probably already better here.
Yeah, very surprising, isn't it? White's just taken an awful long time to get that knight on b1. It went out to a3, then it came to c4, into d6, takes on c8, and it took a bishop we hadn't moved. So, you know, black has gained a lot of time here and is in fact ahead in development with the idea of knight a4. Well, you see, if Wesley So can get into this type of position, then your opponents could certainly do so, because he's a great player. And, he's angling for some sort of minute edge here. But the edge would be based on a move like a4, which black is actually stopping. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how black would tend to play this. I mean, knight a4, maybe g6 and e5, something like that.
Yeah. Centralization of the king at some point.
It does look quite nice for black. Anyway, white's not worse, I don't think. So rook fd1 was played. You possibly think that black is a bit better here, Nigel? What do you think?
Yeah. I would prefer black for sure, because there's pressure against b2 and c3 with the knight on a4. You can have these with white as well in like some reti openings and things, where your knight goes to b3, you played a3 and b4, and then suddenly knight a5 is really very unpleasant.
Yeah, suddenly that pawn structure on the queen side, but white's pawn structure is very static. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. And rook a b1, he couldn't have felt comfortable playing that, and now black is starting to take over the initiative. And there's a definite threat of a sacrifice on c3, I think. Well, that's what happens in the game. I'm not actually sure whether white can prevent it.
Very unpleasant position.
It is. It's surprisingly unpleasant because it's almost come out of nothing. Yeah. What can we say? I mean, I guess you could just say that So wasted too much time with his knight. Spent so many moves to take a bishop on c8, which didn't move.
I just wonder if bishop d6 was an error, because the play looked kind of very normal after that.
Here.
And so maybe some other move here, or even something instead of bishop f4.
I guess a4 move is that, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe that move.
But do we take it?
Yeah, take it and play bishop b7.
And then he goes there, and then you go something like that.
Yeah, rook f4, a to d8.
And then he has to go there. But this is not better for white, is it?
No, it's extremely comfortable for black again.
Yeah. Actually, thinking over, wonder whether this one is more accurate.
Yeah, possibly.
With the point of going a5.
Maybe white have played a4 to stop b5.
Oh, we're going all the way back.
So instead of bishop f4.
Here. Well, then I suppose black goes b6, doesn't he?
Yeah, probably.
And then if you go here.
And it still looks really comfortable for black.
Because if he goes here, you go here, don't you?
Yeah, or even bishop b7, bishop f4, queen c6.
Oh. Well, of course, I mean, this is where we feel that we feel that the game is a quick play game, and even the greatest players can fall into difficulty in a quick play game. With unlimited time, it's a different story. But certainly, it's interesting to see how such a great player has, with the white pieces, fallen into a bit of a mess. And now Artemiev doesn't need to be asked twice; he goes for it. And I'm not sure how white can respond here. This is actually a game from the book. I give this takes, and then e5, which I guess must win. Can white do anything here? We play knight f5.
c2 is met by
knight c2. Well, I mean, trading rooks is quite okay, isn't it?
Yeah, trading rooks, rook d8, but then knight e3
or a5.
Yeah, I mean this is better for black also because
the
minor pieces are so poor here. Knight e3,
rook d2,
rook d2, bishop b3, a5.
Yeah, horrible ending for black, isn't it? For white, sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, anyway, So didn't like that. Went in for some tactics. They just don't work. They're just not working. And that's the point.
Yeah.
Threatening the knight and checkmate. I apologise for all the coughing. COVID is definitely having an effect on my voice, but there we go. Yeah, and I think black is basically winning now. White's 2 pawns down, so we can go through the rest of the moves fairly quickly. Essentially, So's trying a few things, but Artemiev just easily beats him off. Bit of luft for the king. Pawns must go, and that's the end of the game.
Very, very impressive game, even at Blitz.
Well, that's why
I think
I'm always torn including Blitz games in a book, but that one was pretty good. And so, just to summarise, actually, the O'Kelly is a decent weapon, especially for club players, because it avoids mainline theory. It reaches positions which are similar to main lines, but not quite the same, and black can profit from that difference.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing your book.
And, it'll be on sale soon, Nigel. It'll be on sale.
Right. Well, thanks very much for that, Andrew. It's really interesting for me because I've toyed with the O'Kelly myself as like a strike weapon. If I start playing again, which I've sort of been threatening to do, our next game is one of my favourite players, Vasilly Ivanchuk, a player full of ideas. He works very hard on his chess, even now, I think. And he's also got a Twitch channel that I tuned into. It's very, very serious. Right, he's looking at a lot of classic games, but it's a pleasure to see somebody looking at real chess rather than just playing Blitz. Right. So
I presume he's looking at real chess. He's only got about 3 subscribers.
Well, I think it's very disappointing,
and not playing Blitz against 1200s,
hundreds and hundreds, but it's a pretty serious channel, and he's just analysing games. Now, okay, so we've got to. This is the top board in the last round.
Of the Olympiad.
Sorry, was this from an Olympiad?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Okay. And you've got
Ukraine v China.
Ukraine v China. So we've got Vasilly Ivanchuk. For many years, he was the top Ukrainian player. I think that's probably not still the case now, but he was for a very long time. And he's playing against Wang Hao, who, as we know, reached the candidates tournament, and then did not do badly and did not do well and announced his retirement just shortly afterwards. And I think it's a great pity because Wang Hao is a really good player. We don't know exactly why he retired, but it's possible that his government decided that the future of Chinese chess should not be him, and he was persuaded to retire. Anyway, we've got Ivanchuk playing 1d4. One of the things I like about Ivanchuk is he plays all the openings, plays everything. You just never know what's coming. And we have him here playing, allowing a Nimzo Indian. Now that's kind of important. If you want lines with the most bite at this level of chess, then you could do with playing 2c4 rather than 2 knight f3, because I know a lot of people will play 2 knight f3, and I've recommended that myself. But if you do that, you lose lines with some bite in the Queen's Gambit declined, and you lose options against the King's Indian and Grunfeld as well. So if you're a 2700 player, you should probably be playing 2c4. Allowing the Budapest, by the way, where Andrew has produced another book. So, when's that one going to go on sale, Andrew? The Budapest.
It's been on sale for some time.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's about a year now.
Right. I need to get out more.
You could take self-isolation too far.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we might have like nuclear fallout soon instead of COVID to worry about. You know,
chess players are naturally self-isolationist, aren't they?
Well, I am.
And some might say, thank goodness.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, you know, COVID was like falling off a log. You know, it's well, you know, can't go out.
No jokes about COVID, please. Not at the moment. I'm fed up with it.
I couldn't play table tennis. That was the thing that annoyed me the most. Right. So Bishop B4, the Nimzo Indian, named after Nimzovich. Now, at one time they called 1 knight f6 Indian defenses. Why? Because they weren't, you know, they weren't d5, and you got a number of defenses coming off from this. So you've got the Grunfeld was originally the Grunfeld Indian. The King's Indian was King's Fianchetto. I don't think it was.
I think it was called the East Indian.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I believe that was the forerunner of the King's Indian. That's what it was called.
Okay. And you got the Bogo Indian, Bogo Agogo, which was named after Efim Bogolubov, who we've already talked about on the channel. So E3, castles, Bishop D3, D5, Knight F3, and now we have this move B6, which is a pretty solid line actually, as it's played by some very strong players.
That's just very logical, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, normally we see white castle here. So this is the standard move. And then black goes Bishop B7. Has played other things as well. But unusually, Ivanchuk plays A3. And I think what he's arguing here is that if black takes the knight off, he's going to be able to eliminate one of his doubled c-pawns. If he retreats, which is probably also a legal move. I wonder what he has in mind after Bishop D6.
No, you go B4.
I could go E4 because black hasn't played Bishop B7.
True.
That's interesting. So Wang Hao actually takes on C3, BC, and now he plays C6, which is indeed a weird move. The idea behind this move is that when white takes on D5, he wants to take back with the C pawn, and he's going to follow up with Bishop A6. And I have actually seen this in some scenarios I've seen it in some Queen's Indians as well, that you sometimes play B6 and C6 to recapture with the C pawn. Just wondering if I can recall one. D4, knight F6, C4, E6, knight C3, Bishop B4, F3, D5, A3, Bishop takes, pawn takes. I think they've done it here as well, which looks really weird. But the idea is to go B6 and Bishop A6.
Mm.
So it's appearing here as the number 3 move, getting a plus score for black, and not an insignificant number of games either. So I think it has caught on amongst a number of players. That's interesting, actually. A line with a plus score against the F3 Nimzo. Don't get that every day. So going back to the main game, we have C6 played here. Now white takes on D5, black recaptures with this pawn, and white prevents bishop A6, at least for the time being, with queen E2. And now black plays knight C6, but one thing that you can sometimes play in a situation like this is you can sometimes try to go something like bishop B7, bishop B2, queen C8 for bishop A6. I don't know how that would work out. Maybe white goes knight D2 and C4.
You could play C4 right away, couldn't you?
Yeah, probably.
And then rook C1.
Yeah, we might be okay there. So let's say we take and go bishop A6, rook C1, takes, rook takes.
Yeah.
Queen Ace, queen B7.
This looks okay for black, doesn't it? I suppose there are dangers in the position, aren't there, for black? But
yeah, he might be able to trade if white castles. He might be able to trade stuff on the C file.
Yeah, rook F8.
Yeah, rook A or F, and looks reasonable. I mean, but that might be an alternative plan for black.
Well, has white got anything better than trade all the rooks and go E4? I mean, is that better for white? Not really.
Slightly. You've still got a bishop.
Yeah, which can come to life.
Yeah, and a central pawn majority. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't say that black is completely out of the woods there. I had a game like that as black against Mikhail Gurovic, and after the game, he had a bishop in a Nimzo against my knight. I thought I was equalising, and he just comprehensively outplayed me in this simple position. And he kindly went through the game with me afterwards, and and he in Russian, then a bishop is an elephant, right? And he said to me, "Remember, Nigel, elephant always crush horse."
Actually, just looking at this position, Queen C2 is also a move, isn't it?
Yeah, Queen C2.
That
maybe we should have tried something else.
That's got to be slightly better for white.
Oh, definitely. I don't want to be groveling around with rook takes C4, queen takes knight E8, and still be unable to play rook C8. So it's an elephant always crushes horse scenario.
Yeah, providing you can get on top of the horse. Which is tricky business.
Or on top of the elephant. Knight A5, A4, rook E8, knight E5, knight E4. Interesting move. He wants to be able to come back to D6 and control C4. But the problem is that the storm clouds can be gathering on the other side of the board. When you've got a well, as we're going to see in a minute, all of
this next move I really like.
Yeah, very
unstereotyped.
Yeah, because what white wants to do here by taking off this knight, queen takes, and then playing F4, he's taken out a defender of the E4 square and also a defender of the F5 square. That knight on D6 was doing a sterling job in inhibiting white's kingside pawn advance. Now, when you eliminate the knight, then you've got F4 in, and this is like a classic Pillsbury attack type thing. Now, black has got to be really careful here, because if he plays some careless move like that, he's going to get blown out the water like this.
Yeah.
Queen here, check. King here, take that check, and a good old-fashioned rook lift to finish the game. So you've got to be exceptionally careful, and this explains why he now played another move after f4. He played another move that we don't really want to play. He went g6.
Well, but what else could he do?
Well, it's very difficult.
f5.
I mean, yeah, F5. I mean, if you go f5, probably g4.
Or king h1 first.
G4 first.
Why not go for g4?
No pretensions to subtlety here.
No, this is horrible for black.
Yeah, and you could maybe do king h1 next, or just go about some rook lift behind your g pawn.
Rook a2 to g2.
Rook a2 to g2, for example. Rook f3 to h3.
Yeah,
and it's an all-out assault on black's king side. So g6, queen g4, and now here we probably queen e7 was the right way, and then white will hoik his rook up. Black brings his knight back to try and exchange this guy off, and then try for f5 like this. Now maybe that was the right way, and it makes me wonder if perhaps white shouldn't have been leading with pawns round about here, because pawns allow you to create a breach in your opponent's position without having to give up a piece. I don't know, maybe g4. What do you think, Andrew?
g4. Well, black's going to go rook c8, I think, after that. Rook a c8. Let's try that.
Okay, and we go...
you go g4, don't you?
Yeah, I'll go g4, rook a c8.
You're not going to play g4?
Yeah, I'm thinking of playing g4. I'm just trying to go through it in my head.
Well, of course, h4 is another move, isn't it?
Oh, h4 is interesting. I like h4.
Yeah.
Because it's quite not unstereotyped.
No, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe we can play h4 a little bit later after queen g4. So queen g4, queen e7. Can we possibly do h4 here?
Well, he goes rook c8 again. Just has to take it on the chin.
Okay, we go h4, rook c8.
You're not actually threatening any, are you? Sacrifice on g6 can be answered by queen g7, can't it?
Yeah, well, I'll go h5 before too long. Well, we'll defend for now.
Oh, that's boring. Fancy defending a pawn like that.
I want to go h5.
That's really antisocial, defending a pawn.
Look, okay. I'm old.
f6. F6. Do your worst.
Right, we'll go back with the knight.
Oh, he's running now. Let's show your age. You're showing your age now.
Well, I just want to go h5.
Knight c4.
Knight c4. Good move.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Counterplay.
That's a bit rude. Knight c4.
H4 is the modern trend, isn't it? H4 is the modern trend.
Thought that was g4. h4 or g4, but they're usually before move 5. Okay.
I think this is paper play.
Okay. Well, we'll go queen g4. Now he plays knight c4, which shows the attack a certain lack of regard, I would say.
Yeah.
Queen g3, just defending his e3 pawn. Queen c7. And now the storm clouds break. Bishop takes c4, dc, and here he goes, f5.
Yeah, I just think that he basically underestimated the power of White's attack here.
Seems reasonable. They so in the position we had before,
He should have taken the knight on e5. I think I point that out, don't I? Move 19.
yeah. So in this,
just get rid of the knight for goodness sake.
So in this position, we don't take this immediately and play f5 because of e takes f5, rook takes f6. Now then we could just do knight takes g6, I think.
Well, what if he just takes it and plays rook e7?
Well, that's true.
I know, bishop c8, of course. What are we saying?
Oh, bishop c8. Okay. Okay, looks good. So when we've got this situation in the game, when he played queen c7, and then we have this.
There's no
now the queen on g3 is no longer vulnerable to the bishop c8 resource.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So f6, and now here we go, f takes g6. I'm sure that Wang Hao saw this, but he probably didn't see anything else. You know, that he didn't see an alternative there for himself. And we now get this rook hoiking into f7. And what happens now is just sensational, because he gives that rook up with this move. Black has obviously got to take it. And now we get rook f1 check, king here. And this great move. It gives up his last pawn as well.
Super move.
And the point is that when black takes it, queen comes into g7 check. The king, if you go back, then he just takes the rook check. And if we play queen e8, he goes rook f8, pinning the queen against the king and winning. Just remember, in all these positions where black sacrifices his queen, he's going to have to contend with a passed g and h pawn as well. Right, so they're absolutely hopeless, all of those. King d6.
He never gets the chance to sack his queen.
D takes e5 check. A good old-fashioned king march coming up. King d5. Rook d1 check. King e4.
Now I like the next move.
Yeah, it's great move.
That's real class.
Two threats of mate, and he'll have had to have seen this quite a while ago. You know, it's all very well getting your opponent's king on e4, but can you actually mate him? And this move answers that question, because the threats now are queen f4 mate and also rook d4 mate. So I think with a heavy heart, Wang Hao resigned
and retired shortly after.
Retired, yeah, retired soon after.
2 minutes after the game finished.
Yeah. So that was a really great game. You know, really good game. Now we have we have a Berlin coming up next, which has been one of the banes of the chess world. Like, you know, since computerization, and everybody wanted to try and avoid their opponent's preparation, and they sought refuge in basically two openings: the Queen's Gambit declined and the Berlin, because it's hard to prepare for the Berlin even with, you know, the fastest engines.
I just thought we should try and show that this show is not old. Two old codgers speaking about old openings. You know, we should be right up to speed. Right up to speed.
But we mentioned G4 and H4 already.
The dynamic aspects of chess. So how can we avoid the Berlin?
Well, the Berlin, this was also played. I mean, we've only got one version of the Berlin which is being played now, but there's also 5 bishop e7, which I played as a teenager. Can you believe? Right, but
here,
yeah, because I was like really into Lasker's Manual of Chess, and he gave this, and I thought, well, that's a dinky line, bishop e7. And so I was playing this as a junior. I was just about the only junior playing this. You know, everyone else was into the Najdorf and the Modern Benoni at that time.
Is it any good?
Bishop E7. It's sort of under a cloud. I mean, I think that Mershad Sharif played it for quite a while. I don't know if he's still playing it. The idea is that after Rook E1, or sorry, after Queen E2, you go Knight D6. Bishop takes C6.
Yeah.
B takes C6. You can do D takes C6. It's very.
Oh, not Knight B7. Knight B7, is it?
Yeah, Knight B7.
The Rio de Janeiro variation.
Rio de Janeiro variation. But black has got the two bishops. And then later on,
as far as I
castle and play D5 and reactivate your knight. Might even come to C5 and E6.
If you believe that, you'll believe anything.
Well, it worked pretty well at club level, I can tell you.
That knight on B7 looks
well, it's sort of kind of a little bit of a cloud, you know, but you do have the two bishops.
And I imagine that the average player would not be ready for that at all. They're just waiting to face the Berlin Wall, and instead they get something completely different.
Yeah. And they could have had their cloud engine. These cloud engines, they cost a lot to run. If you want, you know, if you go on to like Chessify or something, you know, or Chessbase, you've got to rent time on the cloud engines.
Can't say I've ever thought about it, to be honest. Unless they're mining Bitcoin, I'm not interested. Well, there we are. Bishop E7. You heard it here first. Knight D6. I chose this game because it's a game actually white wins. It's quite a depressing sight when you go to the databases. You press on the output, you know, games played, and there's a string of about 1,000 draws, and then there's an occasional win for either colour. Yeah, well, of course, I was present at the World Championship match in 2000. One of the commentators on Kasparov versus Kramnik. You know, when this first cropped up, I think I was actually commentating with Larry Evans in the first time this ever cropped up in a World Championship match. And he was a little bit scathing, of a big surprise. And, you know, this will just lead to an edge for white, so-and-so. We talked about Art Bisgeier, who was, I think he was one of the main guys to play this, wasn't he?
Yeah. And, Tony Miles as well. But he played one knight C6. And after knight F3, then went E5, bishop B5, knight F6.
Well, okay, so here we go. Off come the queens, and now we get this end game where white's got to work with very small things.
Mainly knight C3 here. Don't know why H3 was played. But it's quite interesting. If you look at the range of moves that black has got against knight C3, he's got about 10 possible moves. And all of these are very difficult to analyze with engines. And that's why the Berlin became very popular. But it kind of does weird things to your brain because you start moving both rook's pawns and developing your rooks via A6 and H6.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not sure this is brilliant for your chess, playing the Berlin.
Well, you look at this position and you think to yourself, well, white must be a little bit better here. And then you actually have the problem of demonstrating exactly why. And as you say, black has to come up with some very original ideas to combat the obvious white central edge. But two bishops plus, you know, the king is not as poorly placed as it looks in the middle. For the end game, it's very well placed. So, you know, practice has shown that this is probably one of the most brilliant inventions ever created, especially at World Championship level, by Vladimir Kramnik and his team, I guess.
Except it was played by Dr. Tarash like 100 years earlier.
Well, anyway, H3, the first step in mobilizing the kingside pawn majority. King E8. Okay, I'm sure there is a point to that move.
Well, you basically have a choice with black about where to put the king. Now, Kramnik played bishop d7 in these to put his king on c8, which is another treatment of the position. Now, when you go king e8, it means you're basically going to leave your king in the middle to help fight white off, right? And you know, and there's various moves that will try and do that. You can also retreat your knight from f5 with knight e7. That's a a strange looking thing to do.
Very provocative, that.
Yeah, various h6s.
Bishop probably play h6 first.
Yeah, a5. These are all moves that have been played in this kind of position. So
well, white sticks with relatively normal play, just manoeuvring his knight and then putting his bishop out on g5. I have to make the classic observation that I don't really understand these positions too well. I mean, to me, it still looks as though white's a bit better, just because you can try to get your kingside pawns rolling at a certain point. But I suppose the bishop on c8 is quite a strong piece. That's the piece white can't oppose. So that's the piece black has got to keep, which is probably why a move like bishop a6 makes no sense. You're not really threatening to trade it off, are you?
Yeah, you want the big thing about white's pawns on the king side, because it's all about advancing these, whether or not you can prevent the advance of them.
Yeah,
and the bishop on c8 does a very good job because it's got no opponents, and h5 is a very useful move as well to do that. So, you know, I am also quite skeptical about black's plan of development if it's moving the bishop away from the c8 h3 diagonal.
Well, he's put it on a good square, hasn't he? I mean, it looks as though the bishop is incredibly active. I mean, his next move looks to me to be slightly controversial. Chops off this knight.
Yeah.
Highly tempting, but it does give up a very valuable piece, doesn't it?
The big danger when you do that is if white will eventually be able to play some e6 or something and trap black's king in the center.
Well, I think knight d5 is quite an awkward move for black to meet if it's allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Bishop e7, does that make sense? Or does that just help white in his quest to get towards a better endgame?
I suppose knight d5.
Knight d5. Or no, knight d5, yeah. I mean, white's got to be a tad better here, no?
It might even be quite substantial.
Unless you can trap that rook on d5. Takes, and then knight d4. We can just go c3.
Yeah. And the rook's got d6 as well.
And then it really is unpleasant. What you must avoid with black is trading all the pieces and coming down to a very poor rook and pawn ending or pawn ending. Yeah, as Nigel says, the light square bishop is key here. But if we just drop back to the game, he surrendered the light square bishop. And that's a controversial move. I mean, what was his intention to go here?
It's been played. Ponomaryov so.
Okay. What happened? In
G2?
G2?
It was a draw. I don't know.
They're all draws. It's the question of how.
Actually.
King G2, is it? Must be, surely.
Let's put it in. Knight d4, knight d5, king d7, f4, king c6. The Qatar Masters 2015.
There's nothing new under the sun.
It's quite a few games, you know. I just noticed they popped up. If we go back to this position, somebody has played bishop e7. Loads of people. It's all draws apart from this game. So
that's why I chose it.
Right, we can put that game in as well. This is Lichess Studies are a brilliant thing. This is what we're using here. So it's a fantastic site. And the Lichess Study is the bit that I use most. I never play online, but this is a really fantastic thing because it's like having a database. You've got an engine up here that we could toggle on if we didn't have a no engine policy, and you've also got game references down here. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Let's see, the engine's recommended bishop takes f3.
No, that's the database.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Right. So we're probably going to have to eat our words on that.
I did say I didn't know anything about it. I think that's quite helpful.
Bishop E7.
Make it up as I go along, I would say.
Bishop E7 was played by Vladimir, Big Vlad.
No, Vasilly Ivanchuk it's got here versus Kramnik.
Yeah, Vladimir Kramnik.
And then this move, yeah?
Yeah.
Then you go takes, and
takes.
The neutralizer. But even so, you'd think that white had the edge here, surely.
King E7.
I mean, who in their right mind would go for this for black?
Well, it's probably an acquired taste, isn't it?
A dreary struggle to hold a draw. An acquired taste is one way to describe it. Okay. Well, at Super Grandmaster level, these guys are so good. I suppose you've got to do something like this, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's all about avoiding engine prep. You know, this is the thing, because they're still going to look at this with engines, but it kind of tends to be quite elusive for an engine. You know, they're not quite as good on this kind of position as they would be on some much sharper, more direct opening.
Well, Bishop F3 has got its attractions, hasn't it? It's got its attractions. Now,
as it turns out.
But now this move C6. He's keeping the knight out of D5.
Yeah, still all being played.
Yeah.
Huge theory, with black having a plus score in the games that quoted.
This position.
Yeah,
wow.
F4 is the top pick as well.
That's played.
Yeah.
Rook D8.
Yeah, still the top pick, Dominguez Nakamura.
Yeah. Well, what's got to be said, of course, is that white can still create a passed pawn on the king side, can't he? So the majority is live, whether this is the position or not. I mean, white can still get a passed pawn going with this pawn structure. So they're still churning out the theory. Here we go.
Out of book now.
Oh, what was the first?
So if we go back a few moves.
Yeah.
And yeah, still more further back. Yeah, further back.
Okay.
Further back. Right. So here, F4. This is where Grishuk Giri varied with bishop takes G5 straight away. Then on F takes G5, he played King E7. He didn't go Rook D8. And then on Knight D6, he played King E6.
F4.
Yeah, F4. Then he went Rook D8.
Yeah. I suppose black's got a bit of extra firepower in this variation. Extra rook.
Yeah. So that was probably the improvement on this.
Well, that was 2015. When was this game played? I think it was played after that. So it could be we've actually reached the limit of the player's knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's now just playing chess.
Or maybe he just forgot.
Always fatal.
Yeah. I mean, people can't remember that much. You know, I mean, it just sort of drops off after a...
So if we just compare these endgames, you're going to get a very similar endgame to the one that's just discussed, except that there's one less rook on the board.
Well, now white comes into the seventh.
Well, yeah. So a lack of knowledge is quite fatal in some of these positions, isn't it? Now, the thing is white winning here? or not?
Well, I wouldn't want that rook to come into the 7th.
Well, there were some exchanges here. I mean, White's definitely better, but is he winning? Because Black's king is pretty active. How do you judge this one? I mean, I don't know. White could wipe out Black's entire queenside pawn structure, couldn't he?
Yeah.
He just plays pawn.
It looks extremely dangerous, I would say.
I mean, White could play b3 and then go after the queenside pawns.
Yeah.
Whereas Black's king has got to perform some sort of conjuring act here.
I think even if he didn't remember, then it was it would have been possible to figure out, a few moves going into that endgame. So starting with his rook d8 instead of because he played rook d8, didn't he? Back on move 17 instead of bishop takes g5 fg king up. So when you go rook d8, then you're letting this white knight come in.
The die is cast once you do that.
Yeah. So
we are talking about subtleties that are sort of far beyond the reach of most players, aren't we?
Beyond my reach. I'll be playing.
Well, now we've come to more normal chess, and
now I'm worried. If I saw that rook coming into the 7th, I would think, whoa, I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like this position for Black very much. I mean, it's visible with the naked eye. The only thing keeping Black in the game is his active king. But A4 is a good move. It's freezing the queen side, trying to freeze the queen side.
I don't know if king e6 is a mistake, and you've got to try and play more actively now.
Well, I thought about king d5 and king c4. How's that?
Maybe.
I suppose White's king just comes into the game then.
Can you do b5 straight away instead of king e6?
Yeah, maybe.
Try and go active as soon as possible, rather than, because king e6 you should never defend in rook endings. Right, you should always be looking to counterattack. And b5 feels.
I'm just wondering whether White would just go by. Then
Well,
Black's
maybe.
got more things to worry about.
c4.
Yeah. Well, I'm only a few moves away from.
Yeah, I'm hopeful.
Don't think you're quick enough. Rook b7's coming, isn't it?
That's true.
Then the pawn.
I'm going to end up going passive anyway.
Sorry.
I have to go passive now anyway, so it's not.
Well, how?
Well, I wait for rook b7, then I go rook a8.
Then I'll just chop all your kingside pawns.
Yeah, I'll go king e6 first. Rook b7, rook a8, but I hate that.
But this is ghastly, isn't it?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
You can't move anything.
Yeah.
King is ready to march. White's king is ready to march.
Yeah, well, it's probably losing. It may well be losing as soon as the rook comes to the 7th.
It must be a depressing experience to play games like this. You rattle off 25 moves of theory, then you suddenly find you're lost, and you got to learn some new theory.
Well, at least he didn't put too much effort in. It was sort of like he got to move 17, and he played probably a worse move than you're supposed to.
Oh, let's have a look. Is this completely lost? Right. I mean, White is now. White's a pawn up for nothing.
I still don't like the fact that the rook is passive. It's not so much the pawn that bothers me as the passive rook.
I mean, Black's just getting killed here.
Yeah.
What do you need? You need a pass pawn in an endgame of this type. So let's see if White creates a pass pawn. Well, Black created a pass pawn for him. That was me. That was not very sensible.
Well, I think it would have happened anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not gonna.
I mean, he's doing his best, bless him.
The king is being driven From pillar to post. Oh dear. It's all dropping off.
It's all dropping off indeed.
It's dropped off.
Yeah. And
That was very,
probably,
very generous of Black to resign that position.
Yeah, probably a time scramble at the end there. Looks a bit time scrambly. So
okay, it's all over.
Yeah. So okay.
You might not see too many Berlin defences on this show, so make the most of it. That's what I say.
There might be some gambit line we can show, like some 1870s anti-Berlin gambit.
No, but joking aside, that was quite an interesting game in many ways. And if we go back to the critical position, who would have thought that Rook D8 could be pinpointed as a mistake?
Especially by us. Yeah, it looked like White got the initiative after that. So we much prefer Bishop takes G5 and King E7.
Yeah.
With
played by Geary.
Yeah.
And then White's probably got to go in there.
Yeah, and then King E6.
Yeah, F4, Rook here.
So what happens there if you take on F5 and then play Rook D7? Because he can still.
Well, hang on, here you mean?
Yeah. So he can still try this kind of thing, can't he?
Yeah, but A7 is protected. So
yeah, A7 is protected. So
here.
he just go Rook F8 and threaten the two white pawns.
Well, White's got to go F4 then.
Yeah.
What does Black play here? A5 maybe? No. Yeah, A5.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's difficult to press for White. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, it certainly looks better because with that pair of rooks off and A7 falling, then I think you're in desperate straits.
Well, lost.
Yeah. Desperate straits and lost.
This is totally unclear, isn't it?
Well, Black's king is looking quite.
It could get mated, though. It could get mated. This is the only problem.
Yeah, Black's king at least is active there. So if you know.
I mean, I could see if I march my king to F3 and play Rook E1 and then E6. If I get 5 moves in a row, you could be mated. Probably won't allow me to do that.
G6. Well, I'm not that sure about that, but yeah. Okay, shall we?
There we go. Yeah, a modern show. So,
just a reminder to everybody: from next week we're going to be doing 3 shows, but not all of them will be on YouTube. So please do. They've got to follow us, haven't they, in order to be able to access all of the shows. We'll still be putting some stuff up on YouTube. And if you want to ask us a question, then please go to Master Chess Web Show and use the contact form, and that will go directly to both of us. And we hope that Andrew will have finished off COVID by Wednesday. You did a sterling job today.
I apologise for all the coughing. It really is unavoidable at the moment. But as Nigel says, hopefully by Wednesday I'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so it's goodbye from me.
And see you on Wednesday. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone.